Mediocrity lives in the gray area, and without clear responsibilities and anchors for accountability, the world stays that way. I'm a firm believer that mediocrity lives in the gray area. Actually, I believe that it thrives there. Without clear do's and don'ts, without clear rights and lefts, anything goes. And that is completely counter to the point of having a standard. And a standard is necessary if you want accountability and you want that in your kitchen, then stick around because I'm going to walk you through my process for cultivating accountability. And if you're here with me and you're tired of the inconsistency in your operation and you're looking for a place to start, then we should talk. Click the link in the description below the video and let's get on a call. I remember the countless disagreements that I've had over the years with managers that have been struggling to manage the most. I've been hearing them explain to me how the standard needed to flex when it suited them or the staff at the times when the standard was actually most necessary, completely oblivious to the fact that the slipping standard was actually what was getting in the way. I was able to recognize that because that was exactly what I had to learn and what I learned through my decades of experience. I remember working at the Moulin de Mougins and working in that Michelin-starred environment and seeing the levels of accountability and the non-wavering standard, regardless of where people were in relationship to it. Right? A standard is the standard, and that has to be the line in the sand. If it flexes, if it fluxes, if it moves, then it's no longer a standard. And therefore, it's impossible to maintain any form of consistency or integrity. Now, I've found that accountability is often mistaken for blame, but blame is not holding someone accountable. So let's start with what accountability is, why I think it's necessary, and finally how to enhance it to create a cohesive, efficient, and consistent team. Beyond the definition, what is it that we're actually asking for? What is it that we want when we want our people to be accountable? I know for me, I want my people to take responsibility for their actions and ensure that their commitments are met. Essentially, owning their tasks and owning their outcomes. Hope that makes you pause for a second and say, wow. In context, that actually seems like a really tall order. That's a high-level request. That's a massive ask of people. I mean, look around at the world that we live in, and people aren't exactly like lining up to own their shit. It's a little bit out of fashion, but measurable performance at any level requires first responsibility, and then second, accountability. Being able to hold people accountable for the work that they set out to do and having them own it. And I mentioned that accountability is not blame. It's not blaming somebody for something that they didn't do. It's not a free pass for dumping a responsibility in someone's lap and then hoping it works out, right? That is definitely not what I'm talking about here when I'm referring to accountability. And I'm also not looking at accountability as being a punishment either. I'm looking at it as an internally driven desire to complete a task that you've committed to. So that leads me to what accountability is. Accountability is constructive and focuses people on the work that they need to do and the growth that they need to take care of. Blame really focuses on fault finding. Looking at earlier versions of myself, I was usually the one at fault, lacking an explanation, expectation, or an outcome when I thought that I had given those things appropriately to my team, and then I could hold them accountable. Like most words and phrases in use, accountability has taken on a negative casting as a punishment. And in that context, who's going to want something that is leading to their punishment? Now, at the surface level, accountability is super important because it provides and leads to the consistency that we need in our food service operation. And especially if quality is a desire, consistency is a must. Quality by mistake is no guarantee. Quality based on a team that just does things without being managed doesn't mean that the outcome is controllable. In fact, it leads to the tail wagging the dog, the inmates running the asylum. When you have accountability in an operation, it ensures that every dish meets the established standards because the process has been prescribed and is being executed, which will lead to consistent food quality and consistent food service with predictable outcomes. On a higher level, accountability helps maintain high standards and improves operational efficiencies. And that does that by ensuring that everyone follows the protocols and procedures and also allows people to jump on board and be successful in an operation more easily. Above that, there's also the personal level, right? It helps charge people and it helps improve people's ability to be better humans. I'm going to use the idea of planting a garden to explain what I believe is the best path to accountability. And let's treat accountability as though it's the fruit. It's the delicious, ripe, perfect fruit that comes from all of the steps that come before it. In order to arrive at that destination, let's start with a bare patch of dirt. And let's think of the dirt in terms of our kitchen, right? The ecosystem that's going to help us support that accountability. And in order to get that ecosystem ready, we need to establish a vision for the culture that we want, where accountability is valued as an asset. If we're not actually talking about accountability, then it's not just going to magically show up. So we need to season and get the soil rich and ready to be an environment that then supports that with our people. Not a culture of blame, but a culture of accountability. It's necessary as a leader to decide to make the vision clear and make sure that there's a clear look at the vision that we have for our attitude, of the team, the look and the flavor of the food that we want to serve, how we want to serve, the environment that we want to serve it in. All of those things need to have some intention behind them. And that all starts with the vision that as the leader we create. Then we can start to make sure that there are standards in place and make sure that they align with the vision. When we have the vision, we have our first anchor in which we can make sure that our operation is heading in the right direction. When we have that vision and then we have those standards, we can provide clear anchor points, or basically indicators that confirm if a task was completed properly or not. Now, to do that, the next piece is to set clear expectations. So we take the vision, we take the standards that are in place, and we take those indicators, and now we flip that around and we create clear expectations in assigning of the tasks. To do this, there's an acronym that I use, and it's called SMART. It's not mine. I didn't create it. You've probably heard of it, but for those that aren't familiar with it, SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. It's an acronym that then reminds me or my leaders of the detail needed when assigning a task. It's typically used to get to clear goal setting. Really works well when it comes to assigning tasks. Assigning SMART tasks means that managers are assigning specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound tasks. I've said it before, but accountability cannot exist in the gray area. And when you're specific about an assignment, about the outcome, and making sure that the outcome is measurable, then you know that the task can be achieved, that the work matters, that it's relevant, and then there's a time assigned. You have all of the dimension to make sure that a task has the detail necessary to be clearly delegated, and then it has enough indicators to know whether people accomplish that task or not. It also ensures that the majority of the gray area is worked out of the assignment in advance, before it's even given out. And all of those things, all of those indicators can help lead to the understanding, to the clear justification of a project being measured to completion, or measured in relation to completion. Now, this is something that needs to become habitual. And these habits are the first steps that set the stage for accountability, to prepare that soil, to make sure that it has the nutrient in it in order to grow seed. It will continue to evolve. The next step is planting the right seeds. And as far as the seeds go, I think of the seeds as the team members who need to be selected, properly placed, and nurtured in our garden. But let's assume that you have the right people. In order to get our team to grow, in order to get our seeds to take root and to eventually yield that delicious fruit that we're talking about, that is accountability, we need to make sure that we apply water and fertilizer. And that's the next piece. The water and fertilizer is the nurturing that we do in our environment. And that nurturing I consider to come from the responsibilities, the management, and the assignments that are given to our team member. So let's go about it this way. Have you ever signed a task for someone to tend to? How does that work out? Does it get done? For me, it never does. And there's a mindset, it came from a business coach, maybe John Maxwell, but I honestly can't remember. That is, if the job is someone's, anyone's, or no one's, it's never going to get done. Even if sometimes it does, it's better to assume that it's not going to, so that we stop the behavior. And when I stopped that behavior, I started seeing much better outcomes and making sure that I was appropriately, truly giving the task, or only when it's mine or Chef Gio's and they are told of the task is the responsibility assigned. Now, as a quick little side note, I also believe that this is why we keep responsibilities to ourselves, because most of the time it's easier than doing the legwork required to assign a SMART task. And this is a trap that new sous chefs and new managers fall into. They're accustomed to doing the job themselves because it's small. Then when it gets bigger, The legwork that goes into assigning smart tasks is some work, and it's also uncomfortable and it's strange, but it's necessary. In order for nurturing to work, what I believe is best to do is to make sure that tasks and responsibilities are organized, tracked, and defined. Then use standardized tools and processes for maintaining that accountability, because they ensure consistency and clarity in the expectations and the performance and the monitoring of that performance. We want to hold people accountable, but we also want people to be able to step forward, so they need to be able to be comfortable and trusting of our reaction when they do bring us information. And I believe that this is one of those areas where leaders have to go first. We have to lead by example. We have to demonstrate accountability in our actions first if we want our team to model that behavior. Then we can expect that our sous chefs do it and hold them accountable for it. Accountability has to be lived top down, and it has to be lived as a value if it's going to be received as a standard by the team. If you've been in the game for long enough, you definitely know that the leader's behavior sets the tone for the rest of the team. When leaders hold themselves accountable, it sets a precedent for the entire team to follow, a behavior that the team can model. Major note: in the early stages of holding people accountable, in the early stages of developing and nurturing a culture based in accountability, it's really important to make sure that recognition is a good part of it. It's a must to reward and to encourage the people who are taking accountability and who are modeling that behavior. That's like great fertilizer for all of the other seeds that are around. The team members who consistently meet their commitments and model the behavior need to be recognized, and it's going to motivate the others to do the same. Remember to continue to reward the desired behaviors, or the gesture seems empty. It seems as empty as an Instagram en croûte post with raw meat, undercooked dough, and delicate microgreens on top of it. The other side, there has to be a consequence as well. There has to be a consequence for not modeling the behavior. Because in basic human psychology, humans are motivated by two things: seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, right? And you only have half of the equation if you have the pleasure, if you have the desirable outcome. If there is no consequence, then what's to stop people from doing it? People are just as motivated by pain, if not more so. So even if you split it down the middle and say half are motivated by pleasure and half are motivated by pain, are you willing to sacrifice half of the team and their motivating factor so that you can only hold the other half of the team accountable, the people who are motivated to do it? So a consequence is absolutely necessary. Once we have those pieces in place and we're fertilizing and we're nurturing those seeds take root. And slowly, as they grow their stems, as they start to develop leaves, and we continue to nurture them, do they get into an environment where they will produce fruit? I've been a terrible gardener for most of my life, but I've come to learn, most importantly, that fruit only comes when the plant is healthy, when the environment is right, and when they're tended to. We have to tend to our garden as well. And this is where negative consequences need to exist, because we have to weed our garden. We have to remove the plants from our environment that are taking nutrients away from the plants that are going to produce fruit. That's where a consequence becomes necessary. And once that all happens, then the ripe fruit of accountability can be enjoyed. And then our focus can shift slightly to maintaining healthy plants and weeding the garden, as opposed to building the environment. It all happens in stages. Accountability isn't something that just happens overnight. Responsibility isn't something that just happens overnight. SOPs are not something that just happen overnight. By fostering a culture where responsibilities are clear and commitments will be met, we can achieve consistent quality, operational excellence, but only when we have our standards in place. Accountability is not about blame, but about constructive growth and improvement. Establishing a vision, setting clear expectations, and leading by example are the key steps along that journey, and they're going to nurture our people. When we use tools like a SMART framework, we can eliminate the gray areas and ensure that we have clarity in all of the tasks as we need it to be. So I'd love to know from you, what are some questions that you have about accountability? Share in the comments below. It's so important to move away from allowing things to live and exist in the gray area so that we can ensure accountability, so that we can ensure when we recognize and reward accountability to reinforce positive behaviors and maintain high standards, then we can also continue to reap the rewards and the benefits of having a culture of accountability. By first preparing the environment and then selecting the right people and then nurturing that team through effective responsibilities, training, and management, then you can absolutely transform the chaos of the operation into a structured, nurturing environment. All that said, if you want the guided path to developing the vision, documenting the standards, and implementing accountability, then I'm here to support you. Click the link in the description below the video and let's have a commitment-free conversation and you can learn how. When you embrace principles of accountability, inevitably you will watch your operation thrive, and that will definitely free up the time for you to be able to step at higher level tasks or maybe take a day off. Thanks for joining me today. And if you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe if you or someone you know is a chef looking for solutions to thrive in our unpredictable world of hospitality.